Sign the papers, Kate. It's over. I need a woman who fits my future, not a housewife who's holding me back. Those were the last words Adrian Cross said to the woman who had quietly built his empire from the shadows. He thought he was discarding a plain, unambitious anchor to marry a supermodel who looked the part of a CEO's wife. He didn't know that the boring woman sitting across from him wasn't just Kate the housewife. She was Catherine Hale Vanderbilt, the silent matriarch of the Ascension Trust, a $1 trillion fund that owned half of Wall Street. Today, you're going to hear the true brutal story of a man who traded a diamond for a piece of glass, and the devastating revenge that cost him everything. This is he divorced her for another woman. Unaware, he lost a $1 trillion queen. The rain in Manhattan didn't wash away the grime. It just made the city look like it was weeping oil. Inside the penthouse suite of the Pierre Hotel, the atmosphere was drier than the Sahara and twice as cold. Adrian Cross stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at Central Park. He adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke Brioni suit, checking his reflection in the glass. He looked every inch the tech mogul of the year, 34 years old, sharp-jawed with eyes that used to look at his wife with adoration, but now held only impatience. "Are you done reading yet?" Adrian asked, not turning around. Sitting at the mahogany dining table was Catherine, Kate. To the outside world, she was the invisible Mrs. Cross. She wore a simple beige cardigan that had seen better days and no makeup. Her hair was pulled back in a practical, messy bun. She didn't look like the wife of a man whose company, Cross Dynamics, had just been valued at $3 billion. She looked like a relic, a ghost of his struggling past. Kate looked down at the divorce settlement. The terms were generous, theoretically. $10 million. The beach house in the Hamptons, a clean break. But the money meant nothing to her. "Adrian." Her voice was soft, lacking the tremor he expected. "Is this really what you want? We've been together since you were coding in a basement in Queens. I've been your partner." "You were my partner when I was nobody, Kate," Adrian said, finally turning to face her. His expression was pitying, which hurt more than anger. "But look at us. I'm attending galas at the Met. I'm shaking hands with senators and the heads of J.P. Morgan. And you're happy staying home baking bread and reading books." "I stay home because you asked me to manage the private accounts," Kate reminded him gently. "Because you said you didn't trust the accountants." "That's administrative work, Kate. I'm talking about image. I need a wife who can walk a red carpet, a wife who speaks 3 languages, a wife who matches the brand." He didn't say her name, but they both knew who he meant. Jessica Vane. Jessica was everything Kate wasn't. Tall blonde, an influencer with 4 million followers and a fake British accent. She was the daughter of a minor steel magnate, giving her just enough pedigree to dazzle Adrian, who was desperate to be accepted by old money. "It's Jessica, isn't it?" Kate signed the last page of the document. She didn't cry. She closed the folder with a definitive thud. Adrian sighed, relieved. "She understands the world I live in now, Kate. She can help me expand into the European markets. Her father knows people in Monaco. Look, I don't want to be cruel. You're a good woman. But we've outgrown each other. You're simple. I'm complex." Kate stood up. She was shorter than him, but for a split second, Adrian felt a strange shift in the air pressure. A heaviness. She looked him dead in the eye, her brown eyes suddenly sharpening into something resembling obsidian. "Simple," she repeated. A dry, humorless chuckle escaped her lips. "You think I'm simple because I chose to be quiet." You mistake silence for ignorance, Adrian. That has always been your fatal flaw. Don't make this dramatic. Adrian checked his Rolex, a gift Kate had bought him 3 years ago, though he told people he bought it himself. The driver is downstairs. He'll take you to the apartment in Brooklyn until the Hamptons house is transferred. I don't want the house, Kate said. She picked up her old leather tote bag. And I don't want the 10 million. Adrian blinked. Excuse me. Don't be an idiot. Take the money. I don't need your pocket change, Adrian, she said, walking toward the door. She paused her hand on the brass handle. I'll sign the papers. But remember this moment. Remember the moment you decided I wasn't enough. Because the next time we meet, the table will be turned, and I won't be the one sitting with a pen in my hand. Adrian laughed, a harsh, barking sound. Next time we meet, Kate, unless you're delivering my Uber Eats, I doubt our paths will cross in my circles. Kate opened the door. Goodbye, Adrian. Enjoy the view. It's a long way down. She left. Adrian felt a momentary whong of guilt, but it vanished as his phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. Is the witch gone? I have a table at Le Bernardin. Celebration time, baby. He grinned, the simple wife already forgotten. He was free, he was rich, and he was about to conquer the world. 3 months had passed since the divorce was finalized. To the public, Adrian Cross was living the dream. The tabloids, Page 6 Daily Mail, were obsessed with him and Jessica Vane. They were the power couple of the quarter. Jessica was always draped in Chanel, hanging off Adrian's arm at charity galas, flashing a massive 10-carat diamond ring. But inside the glass-walled boardroom of Cross Dynamics, the atmosphere was rotting. I don't understand. Adrian slammed his fist onto the marble table. Explain it to me again. Why did the financing for the Alpha project fall through Goldman was on board last week? His CFO, a sweating man named Gary, loosened his tie. It's not just Goldman, Adrian. It's Wells Fargo. It's the private equity firms in London. They all pulled out, simultaneously. Why? Adrian demanded. Our numbers are perfect. We have the user base. They're citing risk assessment protocols, Gary stammered. But honestly, Adrian, it feels personal. One of the bankers at Credit Suisse let something slip off the record. He said they received a red flag directive. From whom? The Ascension Trust. The room went silent. Adrian froze. He knew the name. Everyone in finance knew the name. The Ascension Trust was the white whale of global finance. It was a sovereign wealth fund that operated privately, rumored to manage over $3 trillion in assets. They owned shipping lines, earth mines, pharmaceutical patents, and substantial stakes in almost every major bank. They were invisible, silent, and omnipotent. We've never done business with Ascension, Adrian said, confused. Why would they flag us? I don't know, Gary said. But when Ascension flags a company, the rest of the market follows. They're afraid to touch us. If we don't get that $500 million injection by next month, the Alpha project is dead. And if Alpha dies, our stock price tanks. Adrian paced the room. Get me a meeting with them. Who's the CEO of Ascension? No one knows, Gary said. It's run by a board of proxies. The actual owner, the head of the family, is a ghost. Rumor has it the leadership changed hands, recently returned to the direct heir of the founding family. I don't care if it's a ghost or a goblin, Adrian snapped. Fix it. I have a wedding to plan. Jessica is demanding a ceremony in Lake Como, and I'm not going to tell her we're cash poor. Later that evening, Adrian returned to his new penthouse in Tribeca. He expected peace. Instead, he found Jessica screaming at a maid. I said sparkling water, you idiot. This is still... Jessica threw a glass. It shattered against the wall. "Jessica!" Adrian barked. "Stop it!" Jessica spun around, her face flushed. "Finally. Do you know how hard it is to get good help? And where have you been?" "The wedding planner needs the deposit for the Villa d'Este. It's 200,000. Transfer it tonight." Adrian rubbed his temples. "Jess, can we wait a week on the deposit? Cash flow is a little tight right now. Just temporary." Jessica's eyes narrowed. The loving fiancé mask slipped, revealing the calculator underneath. "Tight? You're a billionaire, Adrian. Don't tell me you're having money problems. If the press finds out, I'll look like a fool. I'm not marrying a broke tech bro." "I'm not broke," Adrian shouted, his ego bruised. "It's just a business hiccup. The Ascension Trust is blocking my financing." Jessica rolled her eyes. "So charm them. You're Adrian Cross. You can charm anyone. That's what you told me." "I can't charm them if I can't find them." Just then Adrian's phone rang. It was a private number. He answered aggressively. "Who is this Poole?" "Mr. Cross." A crisp British voice answered. "This is Alistair Sterling, Chief of Staff for the Ascension Trust." Adrian's heart stopped. He put the phone on speaker, silencing Jessica with a wave of his hand. "Mr. Sterling, I was just talking about your firm. There seems to be a misunderstanding regarding my financing." "No misunderstanding, Mr. Cross." The voice was cool, detached. "However, the chairwoman of the trust has agreed to review your file personally. She is hosting a private charity gala in Vienna this weekend. The Golden Masquerade. You are invited." "I'll be there," Adrian said immediately. "And my fiancé. The invitation is for you alone, Mr. Cross. The chairwoman values discretion, and she prefers to deal with the decision-makers." Adrian looked at Jessica, who was fuming. "Fine. I'll be there alone." "Good. The chairwoman is eager to see if the reality of Adrian Cross lives up to the reputation." The line went dead. "You're going without me," Jessica screeched. "To Vienna. Who is this chairwoman?" "It's business, Jessica." Adrian grabbed his jacket. "If I land this deal, we get the wedding, the house, the jet, everything. If I don't, we lose it all. So shut up and let me work." He stormed out. He didn't know why, but as he rode the elevator down, his mind drifted back to Kate. Kate never threw glasses. Kate never demanded deposits. When his first company failed 5 years ago, Kate had sold her grandmother's jewelry, the only valuable thing she owned, to make payroll for his employees. She had handed him the check and made him a grilled cheese sandwich, telling him, "Money is loud, Adrian, but wealth is quiet. You'll make it back." He shook his head. "Stop it," he told himself. Kate was a doormat. This chairwoman, she's the real deal, a $1 trillion queen. I just have to convince her I'm worth the investment. Little did he know he had already convinced her. He had convinced her he was worth absolutely nothing. The flight to Vienna was somber. Adrian took the corporate jet, sipping scotch, reviewing the dossier his team had scraped together on Ascension. It was terrifyingly sparse. Ascension Trust, founded 1920. Assets, real estate, tech, aerospace, sovereign debt. Primary shareholder. The Vanderbilt Hale lineage. Hale. Adrian paused. He stared at the word. Hale. Kate's maiden name was Hale. He laughed out loud in the empty cabin. No, impossible. Kate Hale was a girl from a small town in Connecticut. Her father was a librarian. She shopped at Target. She clipped coupons. The idea that his ex-wife, who wore oversized T-shirts to bed, was connected to the Vanderbilt-Hale banking dynasty was ludicrous. It was a common name, like Smith or Jones. "You're losing your mind, Cross," he muttered. "Focus on the pitch." He landed in Vienna on a snowy Friday evening. The instructions led him to the Hofburg Palace. This wasn't just a party. It was a gathering of the people who actually ran the world. He saw the Prime Minister of Italy. He saw the CEO of Aramco. Adrian put on his mask, a sleek black domino mask, handed to him at the door. Everyone was masked. It was part of the game. He wandered the ballroom, champagne in hand, feeling small for the first time in years. He was a shark in a pond, but here he was, swimming with leviathans. "Mr. Cross." He turned. A man in a tuxedo, the one who had called him Alistair Sterling, bowed slightly. "The chairwoman will see you now. She is on the balcony." Adrian straightened his tie. This was it. This was the pitch of his life. He followed Alistair up a marble staircase away from the noise of the orchestra. They reached a secluded balcony overlooking the snowy streets of Vienna. A woman stood there. She was facing away from him, looking out at the city. She wore a gown of midnight blue velvet that hugged her figure with a train that pooled like liquid sapphires around her feet. Her back was bare, revealing skin that glowed in the moonlight. She wore no jewelry except a single massive diamond choker that Adrian recognized from a Christie's catalogue it had sold for $40 million last month. She radiated power. It came off her like heat. "Madame Chairwoman," Adrian said, using his most charming, deep voice. "It is an honor." The woman didn't turn. "Mr. Cross, you've come a long way to beg for money." The voice. It was lower, huskier, refined by elocution lessons, but the timbre. It sent a chill down Adrian's spine. "I've come to offer a partnership," Adrian corrected, stepping closer. "Cross Dynamics is the future. Your red flag is a mistake. I'm the best in the industry." "The best?" The woman turned slowly. She wore a mask made of white gold and diamonds that covered the upper half of her face. But her mouth, her lips were painted a deep crimson. And her jawline. "You claim to be a visionary, Adrian," she said. "But you have a history of making poor investments. You trade long-term value for short-term assets." "I don't know what you mean," Adrian said, his throat suddenly dry. "I think you do." She reached up and unclasped the mask. It fell away. Adrian stopped breathing. The face was sharper. The makeup was flawless. The eyes were whole and commanding. But there was no mistaking it. It was Kate. But not the Kate who baked bread. This was a Kate who could buy his entire life with the change in her purse. "Hello, Adrian," she said, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "I believe you wanted to discuss my simplicity." The wind on the balcony of the Hofburg Palace whipped around them, carrying the scent of snow and roasting chestnuts from the streets below. But Adrian Cross was sweating. He stared at the woman standing before him. The face was the one he had woken up to for 7 years. The eyes were the ones he had ignored over breakfast 1,000 times. But the posture, the aura, the terrifying stillness that was a stranger. "Kate," Adrian whispered, his voice cracking. "This is a joke. A prank. Did you hire actors? Did you sleep with someone to get in here?" Catherine Hale. Vanderbilt didn't flinch. She simply took a sip of her champagne, the crystal flute looking fragile in her hand. "Typical Adrian," she said, her voice smooth and devoid of the warmth he used to take for granted. "When faced with something you can't understand, you assume it's a trick. You assume I'm incapable. You clipped coupons for laundry detergent, Adrian shouted, stepping forward. Two massive security guards materialized from the shadows, but Catherine raised a hand to stop them. You drove a 2014 Honda Civic. You cried when we went over budget on groceries. I respected our budget because you set it, she corrected him calmly. I lived the life you could afford, Adrian, because I wanted to be your partner, not your savior. I wanted to know if you loved me, or if you would just love what I could give you. She walked over to the stone railing looking out at the city lights. My grandfather was Silas Hale. You know the name? Adrian felt the blood drain from his face. Silas Hale was a myth in the banking world. A robber baron of the 20th century who had consolidated steel, oil, and shipping into a private trust so vast it was never publicly listed. He died 10 years ago, Adrian stammered, and left everything to his only granddaughter, Catherine said. I was 24. I was terrified of the shark tank, so the board of trustees managed the assets while I tried to find a normal life. I met a young, ambitious coder in a coffee shop in Queens. He seemed hungry, passionate, and he didn't know who I was. It was intoxicating. She turned back to him. The moonlight hit the diamonds at her throat, scattering light across her face. I loved you, Adrian. I loved you enough to play the role of the supportive, simple wife. I waited for you to build your own empire. I thought once he feels secure, he'll see me. But you didn't. As you got richer, you got smaller. You became shallow. You traded substance for shine. Adrian's mind was racing. He was doing the math. If she was the Hale heiress, the alimony he had given her, the $10 million. $10 million, he muttered, a hysterical laugh bubbling up. I gave you $10 million to go away. That's why you didn't fight for more. It wasn't pride. It was indifference. It was pocket lint, Adrian, Catherine said icily. I make $10 million in interest every 4 hours. The reality hit him like a physical blow. He fell back against a stone bench. He had divorced a woman worth trillions to marry an Instagram model who panicked over a credit card decline. Why tell me now? Adrian asked, looking up at her. Why bring me here to gloat? To give you a chance, Catherine said. Adrian sat up straight. Hope, desperate and pathetic, clawed at his throat. A chance. I am a businesswoman first, Adrian. I don't let emotions dictate the market. You have a company. It's failing because I flagged it. I admit that was personal. A moment of weakness. She placed her champagne glass on the ledge. Convince me, right now. Pitch me cross dynamics. If you can prove to me, to Catherine the chairwoman, not Kate, your ex-wife, that your company has actual value beyond your ego, I will lift the red flag. I will fund you. Adrian stood up. This was it. He could fix this. He was a salesman. He smoothed his suit. He went into his pitch. He talked about user acquisition costs, about the proprietary algorithm for the Alpha project, about the projected Q4 revenue. He spoke for 10 minutes using every buzzword, every charm tactic, every power pose he knew. When he finished, he was breathless. He smiled, confident. So the numbers don't lie. Catherine looked at him for a long moment. Then she sighed. It was a sound of profound disappointment. You didn't mention the product, she said softly. What? You talked about revenue. You talked about market share. You talked about yourself. She shook her head. You didn't once mention what the Alpha project actually does for people. You didn't mention the privacy concerns your engineers raised in the ethics memo last week. Yes, I have that memo. You didn't mention that your proprietary algorithm is based on stolen code from a developer in Bangalore you fired without severance. Adrian's mouth fell open. How do you... I own the data centers you rent, Adrian. I own the bank that processes your payroll. I see everything. She stepped closer, her eyes hard. You haven't built a company. You've built a scheme. It's hollow, just like your new life. She turned to Alistair Sterling, who had been standing silently by the door. Mr. Sterling, escort Mr. Cross out. The Ascension Trust declines his proposal, and initiate Phase 2 of the audit. Wait. Adrian scrambled after her as she walked away. Kate, please think about what we had. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Jessica means nothing to me. Catherine stopped. She didn't turn around. That's the problem, Adrian, she said to the empty air. Nothing means anything to you. You're bankrupt, in every sense of the word. She vanished into the ballroom. Adrian was grabbed by the arms. The security guards didn't ask him to leave. They dragged him. As he was shoved out the back exit of the palace into the freezing Vienna night, he realized he didn't even have his coat. He stood in the snow, shivering, the echoes of waltzes drifting from the windows above. He pulled out his phone. He had to call someone. He dialed Jessica. Hello. Jessica's voice was loud. She was at a club. Did you get the money? Can I book the villa? Jessica, Adrian said, his teeth chattering. We need to talk. I can't hear you. Just text me the confirmation number. She hung up. Adrian looked at the phone. He looked up at the palace. He screamed a raw sound of frustration that was swallowed instantly by the vast, indifferent city. The return to New York was not the triumphant entry Adrian had imagined. He flew commercial business class, but still a humiliation for a man who owned a Gulfstream, which was currently grounded due to maintenance issues that were actually unpaid hangar fees. When he landed at JFK, the news was already breaking. CNBC alert. Cross Dynamics. Stock plummets 23%. Amid rumors of failed financing. Adrian sat in the back of his Uber, watching the red arrows on his phone screen dive downward. Every tick down was another $1 million of his net worth evaporating. He arrived at the Tribeca penthouse to find chaos. The apartment was filled with half-packed suitcases. Jessica was storming around the living room, wearing a silk robe and holding a glass of vodka. It was 11 a.m. "You're back!" she shrieked. "Do you see this? My friends are texting me. They're asking if we're broke. Vogue just cancelled my feature for next month because they heard rumors of instability. Fix this, Adrian." Adrian dropped his bag. He looked at Jessica, really looked at her. Her face was contorted with selfishness. There was no concern for him, no question about how the trip went. Just worry for her social standing. "The deal didn't go through," Adrian said flatly. Jessica froze. "What? Ascension passed. They're auditing us." "So go to someone else." Jessica threw her hands up. "Go to BlackRock. Go to the Saudis." "I can't," Adrian snapped. "Ascension is the bellwether. If they pass, everyone passes. We're radioactive." "So what does that mean for me?" Jessica demanded, stepping closer. "What about the wedding? The ring?" "I am not walking down the aisle in a backyard, Adrian." "Is that all you care about?" Adrian shouted. "I just lost half my company's value in 6 hours. I might be investigated by the SEC, and you're worried about a party." "I'm worried about my brand," Jessica screamed back. "I have sponsors. I can't be associated with a failure." Adrian stared at her. The contrast was blinding. He remembered the night his first server room flooded. He had called Kate at 3 a.m., sobbing. She had driven over in her pajamas with a wet/dry vac and coffee, and they had spent the night sucking up water together. She hadn't worried about her brand. She had worried about him. "Get out," Adrian said. "Excuse me, Get out. Go to your mother's. I need to work. You can't kick me out. I live here. It's my apartment, Jessica. And right now I can barely afford the mortgage. Get out, Jessica scoffed. She grabbed her purse. Fine. I'm going to the Hamptons. Call me when you're a billionaire again. Or don't. She slammed the door. Adrian was alone. But he didn't have time to wallow. He went to his home office and locked the door. He had to fight back. If Catherine wanted war, he would give her war. She might have the money, but he knew her secrets. Or at least he thought he did. He called his lawyer a shark named Arthur Pendergast. Arthur, I need you to dig. Everything on Catherine Hale. Your ex-wife. Arthur sounded confused. Adrian, we just settled the divorce. It's done. It's not done. She's the head of the Ascension Trust. She defrauded me. There was a long silence on the line. Adrian, are you drunk? I'm serious. She hid her assets. That's fraud. If she's worth trillions, I'm entitled to half of the appreciation of those assets during our marriage. I want to sue for a readjustment of the settlement. I want billions, Arthur. Arthur sighed. Adrian, listen to me closely. If she is the head of Ascension, you don't sue her. You run, you hide. Those people don't play by the law. They write the law. Just file the damn suit. Adrian slammed the phone down. He spent the next 3 days in a caffeine-fueled haze, trying to keep his company afloat. He fired 30% of his staff via Zoom. He sold off the patent rights to his earlier inventions. He stopped paying vendors. It was a desperate attempt to stop the bleeding. But Catherine was everywhere. On Tuesday, the Wall Street Journal ran a front-page exposé, the hollow tech inside the ethical nightmares of cross dynamics. The source was anonymous, but the documents were internal memos only the CEO and the board had access to, or someone who owned the servers. On Wednesday, the Department of Labor opened an investigation into his hiring practices. On Thursday, his bank accounts were frozen. Not by the government, but by the bank itself, citing suspicious activity reviews. The bank was a subsidiary of a holding company owned by Ascension. Adrian was trapped in a box that was shrinking every hour. He decided to play his last card. He knew where Catherine was staying. She was in New York for the quarterly board meeting of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. She would be staying at the penthouse of the Carlyle. He didn't call. He went there. He looked like a wreck, unshaven, wearing the same suit for 2 days, eyes bloodshot. He marched into the lobby of the Carlyle. I'm here to see Catherine Hale, he told the concierge. Ms. Hale is not accepting visitors, the concierge said, not even looking up. Tell her it's her husband, ex-husband. Tell her I have the press on speed dial. I'll tell them everything. I'll tell them she's a recluse. I'll tell them she's mentally unstable. It was a bluff and a weak one. But Adrian was desperate. The concierge paused, listening to an earpiece. He looked at Adrian with a mixture of pity and disdain. She will see you. The library. 2nd floor. Adrian stormed up the stairs. He burst into the private library. Catherine was there, sitting in a leather armchair, reading a first edition of The Great Gatsby. She wore a cream-colored cashmere suit that cost more than Adrian's car. She looked serene, untouchable. Blackmail Adrian? She asked, not looking up from the page. Really? That's beneath even you. You're destroying me, Adrian shouted. You're dismantling my life, piece by piece. Why is this revenge? Because I left you. Catherine closed the book. Revenge. No. Revenge is passionate. This is correction. She stood up and walked to a table where a file lay open. You built your company on lies, Adrian. You inflated your numbers. You stole code. You treated your employees like cattle. I ignored it when I was your wife because I was blinded by love. I made excuses for you. I told myself you were just stressed. She picked up a document. But when you discarded me because I wasn't useful to your image, you woke me up. You made me realize that by staying silent, I was enabling a monster. I have a responsibility, Adrian. My family's money shapes the world. We invest in the future. You are a bad investment. You are a cancer in the market. And it is my job to cut it out. I'll sue you, Adrian hissed. I'll tell the world you hid your money. I'll get half. Catherine laughed. It was a genuine, amused laugh. Oh, Adrian, did you never read the prenup? We didn't have a prenup. I insisted on it because I thought I was the one with the money. Correction. Catherine smiled. You didn't sign your prenup. You signed the one my lawyers slipped into the closing papers for our first apartment. You thought it was a deed transfer. You really should read what you sign. Adrian froze. Clause 14, Section B, Catherine recited. All assets acquired or held by either party prior to or during the marriage remain the sole property of the original holder, if said holder is a beneficiary of the Hale Family Trust. It's ironclad, Adrian. You signed away your rights to my fortune 7 years ago, while you were busy bragging about your new loft. Adrian fell to his knees. The floor felt hard and cold. He had been outplayed from the very beginning. He had been playing checkers while she was playing 4D chess. So that's it, he whispered. You're going to leave me with nothing. No, Catherine said. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small white envelope. She tossed it onto the floor in front of him. I'm leaving you with exactly what you started with. Yourself. Adrian stared at the envelope. What is this? A plane ticket, Catherine said. One way, to Cleveland. Cleveland. My auditors found your parents' old house. It was foreclosed on, but I bought it back. It's in your name. It's the only asset you have left that I haven't seized. Go there, Adrian. Start over. Or don't. I don't care. She walked past him toward the door. Oh, she paused. And Adrian, I heard Jessica left you. She's currently on a yacht in the Mediterranean with Victor Drax. You know Victor, my biggest competitor. He hates you, by the way. He thinks your code is sloppy. She opened the door. Goodbye, Adrian. Try not to break anything on your way down. Catherine Hale walked out, leaving Adrian Cross kneeling on the floor of the Carlisle Hotel, clutching a coach ticket to Cleveland, while the city he thought he owned carried on without him. But the story wasn't over. Adrian Cross was a narcissist, and narcissists don't die quietly. As he stared at the ticket, a dark, twisted resolve began to form in his gut. If he couldn't have the throne, he would burn the kingdom. Cleveland, Ohio was a graveyard of gray skies and rusted steel. For Adrian Cross, it was purgatory. The house Catherine had bought back for him, his childhood home, was exactly as he remembered it, which was the problem. It smelled of damp wool and failed dreams. The wallpaper in the hallway was peeling, revealing layers of lead paint underneath. The heating system rattled like a dying lung. Adrian sat on the floor of the living room, surrounded by takeout containers. He had been here for 3 weeks. His bespoke suits were hanging in a closet that smelled of mothballs. His Rolex had been sold to a pawn shop on day 4 to pay for a heater repair and a bottle of cheap scotch. He checked his phone. It was a burner. His old number had been disconnected. He scrolled through the news. Ascension Trust announces $50 billion green energy initiative. Catherine Hale. The silent queen of Wall Street steps into the light. There was a photo of her. She looked magnificent standing next to the President of France cutting a ribbon. She looked happy. Adrian hurled the phone across the room. It cracked against the wall. "She thinks she's won," he muttered, his voice raspy from disuse. "She thinks she can just discard me like trash." He paced the small room. His narcissism, bruised and battered, was knitting itself back together into something sharper, harder. He wasn't just a failed CEO. He was Adrian Cross. He was a genius. He had built a company from nothing once. He could do it again. But he didn't want to build a company. That took too long. He wanted to destroy hers. He went to the basement. Among the boxes of his parents' junk, he found his old college laptop. It was a brick, heavy and slow, but it worked. He booted it up and connected to the neighbor's unsecured Wi-Fi. He began to type. He didn't have access to Ascension servers. He didn't have money. But he had 7 years of memories. He remembered phone calls Catherine had taken in the middle of the night. He remembered names she had mentioned in her sleep or in passing. Project Chimera, the Sterling Protocol, the Cayman's account. At the time, he had thought they were boring administrative details. Now he saw them as puzzle pieces. He spent 4 days piecing together a timeline. He fabricated details where his memory failed him. He constructed a narrative. It wasn't entirely true, but it was damaging. He drafted a dossier, The Shadow Ledger, How the Ascension Trust Manipulates Global Currencies. He didn't send it to the police. The police were too slow. He didn't send it to the New York Times. They would fact-check it. He sent it to the one man who hated Catherine Hale as much as he did. Victor Drax. 2 days later, a black Lincoln Navigator rolled up to the curb of the dilapidated house in Cleveland. The window rolled down. A man with a scar running through his left eyebrow and a suit that cost more than the entire neighborhood looked out. "Get in, Adrian," Victor Drax said. Adrian didn't hesitate. He climbed in. The interior smelled of expensive leather and vanilla. And there, sitting next to Victor, filed her nails, was Jessica. She looked up, scanned Adrian's wrinkled shirt and unshaven face, and wrinkled her nose. "God, you smell like a wet dog. Victor, do we have to touch him?" "He has information, darling," Victor said, his voice like gravel. He looked at Adrian. "My team reviewed your dossier. It's creative. Is it true?" "Does it matter?" Adrian asked, leaning back, feeling the comfort of luxury for the first time in weeks. "It sounds true. And I'm the husband. If I say I saw her doing it, who's going to prove me wrong? She's a ghost. Ghosts don't testify." Victor smiled. It was a shark's smile. "I like it. The grieving, discarded husband, blowing the whistle on the corrupt elite ex-wife. The public will eat it up. We can short Ascension's stock. If we time it right, we can trigger a run on her banks. We can wipe out $1 trillion of value in a week." "And then?" Adrian asked. "And then?" Victor said, pouring a drink from the car's bar. "I buy the pieces. And you, Adrian? You get your revenge, and perhaps a consultancy fee. Say 5 million. 50, Adrian said. Jessica laughed. 50, you're delusional. 50 million, Adrian said, staring at Victor. And I want to be there when she falls. I want to see her face. Victor swirled his drink. Done. But first we need to dress you up. You look like a charity case. We have a Senate hearing to prepare for. Senate hearing? Senator Baines is an old friend of mine, Victor said. He's the head of the Finance Committee. He's been looking for a reason to investigate the Ascension Trust for years. You, my friend, are his star witness. Washington, D.C. was sweltering. The humidity clung to the marble steps of the Capitol building, but the heat inside the hearing room was of a different kind. It was the main event of the decade. The United States Senate versus the Ascension Trust. The room was packed. Cameras from every major network lined the walls. The gallery was filled with lobbyists, journalists, and power players. At the witness table sat Adrian Cross. He had been transformed. Gone was the stubble and the desperation. He was clean-shaven, wearing a navy suit that projected humility and integrity. He looked like the victim. He looked like a man burdened by the truth. "Mr. Cross," Senator Baines boomed from the dais, "you were married to Catherine Hale for 7 years or so years. In that time, did you witness illegal activities regarding the manipulation of foreign currencies?" Adrian leaned into the microphone. He paused for effect, looking down at his hands, then up at the camera. "I did, Senator." A gasp went through the room. "It started small," Adrian lied smoothly. Dinners where she would discuss crashing the Thai baht to buy real estate cheap. Phone calls with central bankers. Catherine. Ms. Hale. She believes she is above the law. She calls the Ascension Trust the invisible hand. She used to tell me that democracy was just a puppet show, and she pulled the strings. "And why did you stay silent?" Baines asked, feigning sympathy. "I was afraid," Adrian said, his voice breaking perfectly. "She's powerful. She controlled my finances, my career. When I tried to leave, she destroyed my company. She took everything. I'm only here today because I can't live with the guilt anymore." It was a masterclass in manipulation. In the gallery, Jessica Vane was live streaming, whispering to her followers, "He's so brave." She was a monster to him. Victor Drax sat in the back, checking his phone. Ascension stock was already down 8%. He had made $400 million since the hearing started. "Thank you, Mr. Cross," Senator Baines said. "We will now call the CEO of the Ascension Trust, Ms. Catherine Hale." The double doors at the back of the room opened. Silence fell like a guillotine. Catherine entered. She wasn't alone. She was flanked by 6 lawyers, but she walked ahead of them. She wore a white suit, stark, clinical sharp. It was a visual rejection of the dark villain narrative Adrian had painted. She looked like a surgeon arriving to cut out a tumor. She walked to the witness table and sat down 4 feet away from Adrian. She didn't look at him. Not once. "Ms. Hale," Senator Baines began, his tone aggressive, "you have heard the testimony. Your former husband claims you are running a global criminal enterprise. How do you plead?" Catherine adjusted the microphone. She looked up at the senator, then scanned the room. Her eyes finally landed on the camera. "I plead competence," she said. Her voice was calm, contrasting with Adrian's emotional performance. "This is not a joke, Ms. Hale," Baines snapped. "Mr. Cross has provided a dossier of dates, times, and account names." "Yes," Catherine said. "I have read the dossier. It is a work of fiction, a very entertaining one, but fiction nonetheless." "Mr. Cross is under oath," Baines shouted. "Mr. Cross," Catherine said, turning to look at Adrian for the first time, "is a desperate man who is currently on the payroll of Victor Drax." Adrian flinched. "That's a lie." "Is it?" Catherine reached into her briefcase. She pulled out a tablet. "Senator, may I submit evidence to the record, Exhibit A?" The screens in the hearing room flickered. A video appeared. It was grainy footage, security camera footage. It showed the interior of a black Lincoln Navigator. Victor Drax's voice filled the room. The grieving, discarded husband blowing the whistle. We can short Ascension's stock, say 5 million. Adrian's voice followed. 50 million. The room erupted. Journalists were shouting. Victor Drax stood up in the back, his face pale, trying to push his way out of the crowded room. Order! Order! Senator Baines banged his gavel, looking terrified. Where did you get this? I own the satellite network that operates the GPS in Mr. Drax's car. Catherine said simply. And I have a legal warrant for surveillance due to a corporate espionage investigation I opened 6 months ago. The conversation you just heard took place in Cleveland, Ohio, 4 days ago. She turned to Adrian. He was frozen. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. But that is not the only thing, Senator, Catherine continued, her voice gaining steel. Mr. Cross claims I manipulated currencies, the dates he listed in his dossier. On 3 of those occasions, I was actually in the hospital. She projected a new document. 7 years ago. 5 years ago. 3 years ago. 3 years. Medical records. I was undergoing IVF treatments. The room went quiet again. The intimacy of the revelation stripped away the cold corporate queen image instantly. I was trying to give my husband a child, Catherine said, her voice softening, just a fraction, making it infinitely more devastating. While he was working late, which we now know meant he was with Ms. Vane. I was in a clinic alone. The calls he claims I made to bankers. Those were calls to my doctors, Senator, asking why the pregnancies were failing. She looked at Adrian with a mixture of pity and absolute disgust. You took the most painful moments of my life, Adrian, and you twisted them into a crime to sell to my competitor for $50 million. You aren't a whistleblower. You are a prostitute. The gavel banged, but no one heard it over the roar of the crowd. Adrian slumped in his chair. He felt the eyes of the world on him. It wasn't admiration anymore. It was revulsion. He looked toward the back of the room for Victor, but Victor was gone. He looked for Jessica. Jessica was still live streaming, but she had turned the camera on herself. I had no idea, she was saying, crying fake tears. I was manipulated too. He lied to me. I'm a victim. Catherine stood up. I believe I am finished here, Senator, unless you have questions about my actual business. Senator Baines, realizing his career was likely over for colluding with Drax, shook his head mutely. Catherine walked out. As she passed Adrian, she paused. She leaned down, her lips brushing his ear. The microphones didn't catch it, but Adrian heard every syllable. I told you, Adrian. Wealth is quiet. You were too loud. She left him sitting there, drowning in the noise he had created. The steps of the Capitol building were a gauntlet of flashing lights and screaming questions. Adrian Cross stumbled out into the humidity of D.C., but he wasn't walking as a free man. 2 federal marshals gripped his elbows, guiding him through the chaos. Mr. Cross, did you know about the recordings? Adrian, is it true you're bankrupt? Adrian looked up, searching the sea of faces for one ally. He saw Jessica Vane standing near a CNN van. She wasn't hiding. She was giving an interview. She dabbed her dry eyes with a tissue, looking straight into the camera. I was a victim of his manipulation. Jessica sobbed, her voice perfectly pitched for sympathy. He told me he was the one being abused. I had no idea he was trying to hurt that poor woman. I'm just glad the truth is out. Adrian lunged, straining against the marshals. You liar! You helped write the dossier. You proofread the lies. Jessica didn't flinch. She looked at him with cold, dead eyes, the same eyes he had looked into when he divorced Kate and turned back to the reporter. "See," she whispered, "he's unhinged." As Adrian was shoved into the back of a squad car, severing him from the world of the wealthy, forever he caught one last glimpse of the steps. Catherine stood there. She wasn't looking at the cameras. She was looking at him. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She simply watched him disappear, her face an unreadable mask of finality. Then she put on her sunglasses and turned back into the halls of power. 6 months later, the downfall of Victor Drax was slower, but far more violent. Catherine didn't send him to jail. She executed a death by 1,000 cuts. It started with the Ascension Trust, dumping all holdings in rare earth minerals, crashing the sector by 40%. Victor, who had leveraged his company to short Ascension's stock, faced immediate margin calls. When he couldn't pay his creditors, came calling. Catherine had bought his debt. Victor sat in his London office as security arrived to escort him out. He left his empire carrying nothing but a cardboard box ruined by the woman he had underestimated. 5 years later. Federal Correctional Facility. Otisville was a grey cage for the forgotten debris of society. Inmate 8940C sat in the common room, looking older than his 40 years. His hands, once manicured, were rough from prison labor. Adrian Cross paid other inmates cigarettes to let him watch the financial news. It was his only window into the life he had lost. Bloomberg TV special report, The $1 Trillion Matriarch. The screen showed footage of a gala in Davos. Catherine looked breathtaking silver streaks in her hair, worn like a crown. But it wasn't the money that made Adrian's chest tighten. It was the man standing next to her, Dr. Elias Thorne, a pediatric surgeon with kind eyes. And in Catherine's arms was a little girl, maybe 3 years old. The reporter's voice cut through the noise of the prison. Catherine Hale says her greatest achievement is her new family. She and Dr. Thorne welcomed their adopted daughter Verity last year. Adrian felt the air leave his lungs. She had everything. The money, the power, and the family he had mocked her for wanting. "Hey, Cross mail call." A guard handed him a single thick envelope. Adrian's hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was a photograph. It was a picture of his childhood home in Queens, the place where Catherine had once supported him. But the house was gone. The lot was now a beautiful park. A sign in the grass read, "The Catherine Hale Community Garden," dedicated to the memory of beginnings. Clipped to the photo was a check. It was made out to Adrian Cross for exactly $10. He flipped it over. In elegant, familiar handwriting, a single sentence was scrawled on the back. "For the Uber." C. The reference to the night he kicked her out when he told her the driver would take her away hit him like a physical blow. She hadn't sent him millions to mock him. She hadn't sued him. She sent him $10. It was the ultimate dismissal. It said, "You are not worth my anger. You are worth exactly the cost of a ride out of my life." Adrian Cross sank onto his bunk. He didn't cry for the billions. He cried because he finally understood the truth she had told him on that balcony in Vienna. He had traded a diamond for a piece of glass. And now, clutching the $10 check to his chest, he realized the glass was broken and his hands were bleeding. And that is the story of Adrian Cross and Catherine Hale. It's a brutal reminder that sometimes the most valuable things in our lives are the ones that don't scream for attention. Adrian chased the noise, the fame, the trophies, and walked away from the quiet power that was holding him up. He ended up with exactly what he fought for, a life of image with no substance. Catherine proved that true wealth isn't just about what's in the bank, but who is standing beside you when the account hits zero. What do you think? Did Catherine go too far with that $10 check, or was it the perfect ending? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of karma and revenge, please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss next week's drama. Thanks for watching, and remember, be careful who you discard on your way up, because you might meet them on your way down.